Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. We're on a rainy Monday morning here in Cannonsburg at Chico Bocello, our home away from home. And our guest today is, I'm so excited about this guest, M.E. Yancosek, Gamble, Mary Elizabeth, which I'd like a lot better.
That's all right. You can do Mary Elizabeth.
And I just got done saying your name and then I tripped over it. See, that's how you get that mental block.
Absolutely.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
I feel very welcome. Thanks so much for having me, Jamie. I'm really looking forward to having a great conversation.
I think I'm absolutely certain we will. You have a lot of history here in southwestern PA and now into to West Virginia. You are currently professor, right, at Fairmont State University.
Yeah, the School of Business, or the College of Business and Aviation. Right?
How does business and aviation? I was going to ask you about that. How does that go together? Where did that come from?
Well, Fairmont had an aviation program, and they were looking for a good place to house it academically. And we happen to have an incredible dean of our business school. He's now our interim provost. And Dean Oxley was just the perfect person for helping to work out a lot of the federal guidelines, because what we're doing in an aviation program is not only do you have, accreditation, but you have the federal government.
Sure.
So Dr. Oxley was just the perfect person to head that up. And we've had so much fun with them. We have a hangar. And
is that right?
Yeah, we share wonderful students. The greatest thing about that aviation program is those students have six-figure jobs before they graduate. It's just such a wonderful opportunity. And, with everything that's going on in academe, it's nice to be able to say that we have directly transferable skills, that folks can get jobs and they can make money.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity for us. And it's just made our business college even better. So
excellent.
We absolutely love it. We love being part of that.
That is excellent. I love that. And it makes perfect sense. I would, because you try to connect the dots, and it's like, well, let's just ask,
Fantastic.
But,
yeah.
So you have a background in education in academia, as well as you're an entrepreneur. You are a business owner, a small business owner.
Right.
You've done a lot of different things. And it seems to me in looking at your journey and your background, you've never been risk adverse. You've never been afraid to step out there and take a risk now and then.
Thank you for saying that. That's just the opposite. That's true. I would say that I'm probably one of the most risk adverse. There's not a T cell in my body that
kidding.
I have a lot of self-doubt and fear. And I was very lucky because my mom was terribly afraid of everything, and she said, "Don't be like me. So just lean into it." And that's really what it's been. So everything that causes me any kind of difficulty, I try to lean into, and it seems to one way or the other work out.
That is very cool. And that's what you have to do in anything. I mean, life, it's not a linear journey. It's not going straight from point A to point B, right? You're going to have a lot of hills to climb, a lot of detours and angles and curves and all those things. So if you're not prepared to lean in and take a little bit of a risk, it's going to be a difficult journey.
Amen.
You're not going to be able to navigate it really
Amen.
easily.
Yeah. Personally or professionally, you've got to handle change and you've got to be resilient. On all of my social media, my tagline, I always try to tell my students, when you brand yourself, think about what's important for you. And for me, grit and determination really says it. There's a lot of people who are smarter, a lot of people who are brighter. As The Rock says, fewer people are going to work harder. And so if you have grit and determination, I think that certainly helps. And so that's one of the things I would love to talk to you about today. I know that you have 5 pillars that you like to talk about in your podcast, that you have life, you have love, you have learn, you have pray and inspire.
Yes.
And so I'd be honored if we could kind of work all of those into today's podcast.
I would love that. I love that because, we try to do that, but it's always, it's always a little bit different. Every guest is different, and has a different perspective. We had a young lady, Melissa Laughlin, whose show actually published today, who really understood it. She founded the Blessed Home Project, which was really a tremendous organization. We had a great conversation, and we touched a little more deeper on those pillars than what we do in the average show, But I'm really excited you brought that up, because I would love to get another perspective on that, because I know what it means to me, but to see what those pillars, somebody else's perspective is really exciting.
Yeah. So the way I'd like to manifest those 5 pillars, if I may, is to talk about my journey.
Absolutely.
You said that we need to have embrace of change. And as a small business owner and as a human being, that change comes through resilience.
Mm-hmm.
I was widowed 3 years ago. And so one of that resiliency has been the practice of solitude.
Mm-hmm.
And how you can do that. I find many business owners are solo,
Right.
We spend a lot of time alone. We're working in our business, we're working on our business, and we're mostly alone. So if there's anything that we can learn about the practice of solitude that can help us, and I think that's where we find your love, the self-love, the
Mm-hmm.
reflection in that solitude. And then the learn, pray, and inspire might be 3 things that maybe we could give your audience at home to think about how to use the practice of solitude, both personally as well
Mm-hmm.
as entrepreneurially. And that could be in the area of journaling, meditation, and enjoying nature. For me, it
Mm-hmm.
was walking, and it still is walking. It's a huge, huge portion. So those are the 3 things I would like to talk about in the ways
Sure.
that I would like to address your 5 pillars for this podcast.
No, absolutely, because that's where I find that solitude that I need, and it's in that 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. space where it's quiet and still, and I journal and I meditate and I do all those things.
Look at you.
And that's,
So
that's
I'm
where
already
I find
speaking
it.
to someone who gets that, knows
Yes,
how to
please,
sustain, how
let's
to
go.
absolutely sustain. So I guess when we talk about the idea of resilience, we think that, as you said, I'm not risk averse, but the truth of the matter is I am very risk averse, and resilience is a real challenge for me. It's adapting to change. And as human
Mm-hmm.
beings, I don't think we like change worth a darn. It's learning how to be humble and
Mm-hmm.
accept the life that you're given and not wish for a life of someone else, right? The thief of happiness is comparison, right?
True.
So
Very, very true.
and when you find yourself that you are, whether by death or divorce or desertion, as they say in The Witches of Eastwick, by yourself, you learn that you need to adapt and
Sure.
you need to
Sure.
learn how to deal with that. So when I think about being alone, it has a real negative connotation,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm alone. I'm my own entrepreneur. I'm working. Nobody else understands what I'm doing. I'm spending a lot of time. The only time I really get to talk to anybody is whenever I come down to a coffee shop and I meet my client and I'm able to really work with them. Whereas the practice of solitude feels very different. It's a quiet reflection. It's a time where we start to think about mindfulness and
Right.
what do I need to do with my day. You said 4 to 6. Set your intention. Your
That's
brain
exactly
waves are
right.
ready to accept that and to begin to think about what we're going to be doing. And how do we give to others throughout
Mm-hmm.
our day? And what does that mean? What is the activity that we want to engage in? And for me, my practice of solitude is joy. And I would love to find joy in my day in some way. Today,
Mm-hmm.
that happens to be this podcast with you.
That's wonderful.
And
That is wonderful. Thank you.
it's a journey of self-discovery, isn't it?
Mhm.
And I'm sure you have had an opportunity to do that, to
Sure.
connect with yourself. And that's hard because sometimes being alone in a connected time
Absolutely.
and having to disconnect
Absolutely.
and having to distance ourselves, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we start to have clarity? How do we start to set goals? How do we have purpose of our day?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you said you awaken 4 to 6
Mhm.
and you start to do your journaling.
Sure.
And so what happens?
That's the first thing that I do. And this is Nick, and I'll apologize for telling this story again, but and I've told this story before, but I have a mentor, still part of my life, who told me when I was going through a very difficult time, a long time ago, that I should start keeping a journal, writing my thoughts down rather than keeping them bottled up. So he actually bought me my first journal. So he said, and the instruction was very simple. Put it on your nightstand with a pen. When you wake up in the morning, before your feet hit the floor, pick it up, write down the first thought. With the first thought that's in your mind, because that's coming from your heart. It's the purest thought that you will have all day. Okay? That's straight from the heart. So write it down, close the journal, and go about whatever your routine is. For me, it's meditation, it's exercise, stretching, things like that. He said, then go about your day and see, back to setting intention, right? When you go to bed at night, open it up and read it, and then reflect. Did you do anything throughout your day? Did your day, was it in alignment with that first pure, honest heart thought, right? And obviously in the beginning it wasn't, because I was all over the place. But as I got into that practice and got more deeply into it, and now it's completely in alignment. So I honestly say that, and I did start to cheat a little bit, because that journaling is actually what was basically the birth of the blog that I write every day, right? So I do take a peek at it after I do all my meditation and everything. I take a peek, and then I'll take that thought, and that's what I write about in the blog that day.
And that's what every entrepreneur needs to be doing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Because
it's life-changing.
Because we know what needs to get done. Mm-hmm. We have our to-do list, and that's what's sitting in front of me. This book never leaves. Mm-hmm. And I also, augment it with my calendar, my Outlook calendar. But it prompts us for our day, but then it frees us, because once we get that written down and we have that freedom, then we already have what we're going to do for the day and what we need to do. Right. I wish someone would have told me this a long time ago whenever I first started my business, that thinking about what I needed to get done that day was a to-do list, and that was burdensome. But journaling and talking about and reflecting on, as you said, if it's only one prompt that day, what went right or what will go right, manifesting it, what went wrong, what was my challenge, what am I grateful for?
Yes.
And that sounds so hokey. I mean, I hear people talk about this on these, TikTok podcasts or TikTok videos all the time about the idea of gratitude. And, you see people putting this gratitude, but it really does.
Is it real? That's the thing.
Because, oh my God. Well, it manifests everything.
It has
when you start to see it, it becomes a daily practice, just like your journaling has become a daily practice. And as a small business owner, you need to be intentional with your energy, because it is a finite amount.
Right.
And you need to think about that. And the other thing that you said, Jamie, that I thought was so brilliant is that you reflect on it. And that is the real trick, is not just writing it down and doing it on a daily basis, but reflecting on it. And when you have that reflective time as a small business owner, that's amazing, because that's one thing you never have is time. You're exhausted. You get up in the morning, you've got everything to do. You've got to order, 10,000 things go wrong. You're just hoping. For me, I have found that I like to be organized, and I like the illusion of control. And my students always laugh whenever I say that. One of the reasons that I wanted to be organized in this podcast with you and talk about 3 things and have a preview and do that is because it gives the illusion that we're getting things done.
Right.
And I don't know of any entrepreneur that doesn't want that illusion.
Absolutely.
So if there is a free way of taking a few seconds at the beginning of your day, and you're right, the 4 to 6 is the magic hour. If you can get up about a half hour, 45 minutes early, greet yourself.
Yeah.
I like to meditate or pray before I even move, and set my intention for the day. The kind of trend thing is manifesting. And then if you can go on with the rest of your day and then have some precious moments at the end to reflect, carving out the self, carving out the time for the self as an entrepreneur and as a human being is probably one of the most important things we can do. I never knew that. I was always busy glorifying being busy, right?
Busyness, busy.
And I always, if you read, I don't know, most of my blogs and most of my posts from the last 10 years, I was always busy. Whenever I was at Bethany College, I took on the business communication, or initially the communication department, put on a television station, radio station, did funding for that, then took over the business department, and always busy, busy, busy.
Right.
And by the tenure of, my 10 years there, I was pretty well burnt out.
Yep.
And you don't realize that unless you fulfill yourself, unless you are giving back to yourself, it's pretty easy to get yourself into trouble.
Well, you can. You're absolutely right. I've been in the engineering business for a very, very long time, and it's not a career that I chose. Right? It was something that I kind of stumbled into. I was going to school to be a teacher. That was my intention, but that didn't work out for a lot of reasons. But so I was able to get a job in construction, which led into the engineering business. And 40 years later, there I am. And around at the end of 2015, I was completely done with it. There was all of the stress and anxiety and all of the things that had piled on, and that burden, carrying that burden, right, had just worn me out. But yet, at the same time, there was no passion left. There were no dragons left to slay, so to speak, right? Because it was all, it became cookie cutter. Really, this utility puts out a proposal. Okay, we'll submit a proposal there. We'll do this one here. We'll do that. We win this. That's great. That's great. But there was nothing new. There was nothing, no new horizons, no new mountains to climb, whatever you want to put in, whatever cliche you want. So I basically just, kind of walked away from it, and I started opened a little LLC so I could, kind of keep the lights on, I started to do little things here and there. And then I got pulled back into it in a good way, and I was re-energized, but it's really, it's like, it's been about 3 years, and I'm pretty much, this is enough. This is enough. So I've started to think about, what comes next? What's the next chapter?
What does come next?
There's, the cool thing is there's a lot of possibilities. It could be anything. When you think about where I'm almost 64 years old, but I mean, if I live as long as my father, I have 20 more years. There's no reason why I couldn't have 30 more years. Dynasties are built in 20 years, right? There's no telling what you can do. So I think it's dramatically different now than I would say, 20 or 30 years ago when my father was 64, for example.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Completely
Absolutely.
different. So you and I, for example, we have a ton of opportunity. Now we're not where Nick is, obviously, but when you think about all of this, right? This is an incredibly cool thing, right? This would be very cool to do. I love meeting people and talking to people and getting to know their stories and things like that.
But it has to be bigger than that, right? It has to have a purpose.
Yeah. It has to have a purpose. It has
to help others. It has to give back, because that's what we are called.
Right. That's
by
exactly
the universe
right.
to do, is to give back to others all that has been given to us.
That's 100%.
And so that's one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing today, right? We're trying to give some real world help for individuals as well as for businesses.
Right.
So where did you think all that anxiety and maybe same old came from? It's just because you became proficient and so you became bored?
A little bit. It was a combination of that and really, when you're doing business development, marketing, sales, whatever industry, you're in that, you're that public person.
Absolutely.
And believe it or not, I'm not a public person by nature.
Would you say you're an introvert?
To a certain extent, yeah. I mean,
but you've learned how to take on some extroverted characteristics.
Because I like my alone time.
Yeah.
And I learned over the years that alone and lonely are two completely
And
different
that's what we're talking
things.
about, the practice of solitude and being alone.
That's
Absolutely.
exactly right.
Absolutely.
You can be lonely in a room full of people,
Absolutely.
right? But, to be alone, you really have to
Right.
find that solitude. You've got to find
Right.
that quiet, still place,
Yeah.
not only around you, your environment, but also
How did you
inside.
find out that you were an introvert? Did you take like a Myers-Briggs test or something
No, not
like that?
really. I think it was just after I was divorced, my first marriage, and it was pretty unpleasant, and largely driven by myself. I was a dramatically different person. Even though I was nudging 40 years old, I was very immature 40 years old because we had started at a very young age, jumped into something with both feet, had 3 children before we were 25 years old, and all of these things. And by the time we realized, the heck have we done? We had gone here instead of here. So it didn't end well. And again, I take full responsibility for that now. But in the moment, it's a lot easier to point the finger.
Oh, sure.
No, that wasn't me.
Sure.
So, but I learned from that, and I really, really crashed into a dark place. And I was diagnosed with depression eventually. I didn't know what it was at the time. But when you're sitting there and you literally, there's nowhere to go, and you're trying to feel your way around, it's like close your eyes and find that cup in front of you so you can take a drink, right? It's hard.
And you touched on that with your interview with Joey.
Yes.
Because you talked about the idea that he was never diagnosed. He was just told, leave.
Yes.
Yes. that you were a loser or whatever,
Yeah.
but he was never given the tools to
Right.
figure out what to do. So
mental
you
health
really-
has become very important to me because
Sure.
I've lived it.
Sure.
And when you talk about, depression or when men in particular, I'm gonna qualify that. Men in particular, when we talk about mental health, because I'm of the age where I was told, you get up and
buck
walk
it
it
up,
off,
buck it up.
cowboy up,
Yeah, buck it up,
come on,
right.
you gotta toughen up, you gotta
Sure.
you gotta carry that.
Sure.
And I'm that generation.
Sure.
Right?
And
So-
that starts out with how we play, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
little boys are competitive. Little girls might decide, oh, here, we're going to play house. You be the mother this time. I'll be that. But guys are like, I'm king of the hill.
absolutely.
And so that kind of behavior
Absolutely. You
starts
have to
out
be-
with the way that we play as
Right.
children.
That's exactly right. And it carries forward. And when all of that happened, I wasn't prepared for it.
Of course not.
I wasn't prepared.
Of course not.
So and again, when you think about all of this volatility that was going on and this frustration and anger in this space, and then going back to my faith and my religious upbringing, divorce was a bad thing.
Of course.
So
It's
then I
failure.
carried that
It's failure.
guilt, right? So add that layer of guilt
Yeah.
on top of it.
Oh, yeah.
So it
And
was
shame.
and it just went, and
Yeah.
it just collapsed under the weight.
Sure.
But so I had nowhere else to go but in here, and that's when
The best place.
I discovered my heart and started to listen to that, right? Because your heart talks to you all the time, but it whispers, and you have to pay attention.
Practice of solitude. You have
Right.
to be quiet
And
in order
that's
to
where
hear it,
you get
to
it.
notice the thought.
Right.
And to notice it. And that's one of the things about the second thing I wanted to talk about was meditation,
Mm-hmm.
is that you notice the thought, but you do it without judgment.
Yeah.
That you're not saying, oh, shut up. I don't want you to keep telling me this, or I don't know what I'm going to do with this, or I'm stressed out because there's no way,
Right.
I'm going to be able to do this. And so part of the journaling is when you start to reflect, you start to think about, okay, there's many different ways for me to meditate. There's many different ways for me to pray. As
Yes.
we prayed before
Absolutely.
we came together today to have clarity and to make that what we were doing good for goodness and for others. But I think that there are many different forms that meditation and prayer takes on. And I think that's what
absolutely.
you mean when you talk about one of your 5 pillars of inspire.
Yes.
You really
Yes.
want very much to do that. For me, during the pandemic, I was alone, obviously, and we were in family groups. And having lost my partner, I learned very quickly that I needed to embrace the solitude practice pretty seriously. And I started
Right.
walking. If you look at any of my social media posts, probably 90% of them are cloud pictures, sunrises, sunsets. I've really learned that the forest bath is a great way when you are feeling anxious, when you're not sure what
and your
to
farm
do.
is such a beautiful place.
Oh, isn't it
I mean,
great?
it's just, and
It's
I
just
love when you
such a
share those
blessing.
pictures because it's just a beautiful little place,
Thank
and
you. Bet the
and
farm.
I love it.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, you when you want to talk about solitude, not only do you live there by yourself, but you're relatively isolated there.
Yeah,
I mean,
a
you're
little bit.
not, you know, it's not like you can see your neighbor's lights on right there, you know. But, you know, to your point, when you think about reflection, I think that where I was able to eliminate all the negative self-talk that I had been preaching to myself
And
for
programmed
years and
and
years
programmed
and years,
by
and
other
programmed.
Madison Avenue
Right.
magazines, television shows.
Yes. But that reflection, when I learned how to reflect, right? Because you can reflect on something without bringing it and carrying it forward. And as you get away from that time and distance, you get away from it, and that reflection becomes very powerful because you can see then from a different lens an experience that was devastating in the moment, but now, okay, now that's what it's teaching me.
But I was
That's
just going
what
to
it's
say,
teaching me.
it's the lesson, isn't it?
Yes.
So, you know, you can't get out of life without being diagnosed with an illness, cancer
Absolutely.
or something.
Absolutely.
You can't get out of life without losing people you love. You can't get out of life without realizing that things just aren't going the way you thought
Right.
they should go, or maybe you didn't even think. Maybe you didn't
Sure.
really have a plan.
Right.
And that is part of the disconnect. And that's what you were feeling when you said, I was feeling anxious, and it was the same old, same old. And so
Right.
what you learn is that if you become comfortable with being alone and look at solitude as a blessing and a lesson that you are to learn, then it will change. You asked earlier, have I started dating? Am I looking, into those kinds of opportunities for myself? And I said, it's probably going to be something that's just going to have to kind of like hit me over my head. I've
trip over it.
tried, I've tried doing a couple different things. It just didn't feel good this
Right,
way or
right,
that way.
right.
And so you are being taught a lesson by the universe, or if we believe in our God. And our job is to take that lesson, to take the grace from it, to take it with dignity and wisdom, and to try to help others as they accept all of those things that happen.
And that is inspiration, right? And you can't love another human being. You can't inspire another human being. You have to love yourself first. You have to be able to inspire your own heart.
Isn't that pithy?
Isn't
that pithy?
It is.
When my mother would say that, I was just like, oh, get over yourself. Really?
I know.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, in those pillars, I remember my father and I having these conversations when I was a kid, right? I probably didn't pay attention to it until I turned 40 and went into all that crap. And I really just kind of put myself in a position where I was, again, groping in the dark and I was just trying to grab onto anything, any kind of lifeline. Then I started to think, holy crap, he was right.
Yeah. Aren't they amazing
He
how
was
the older
right.
you get, the
Yes.
smarter they get?
Yeah, it's funny, but yeah, that's literally, it was born out of desperation on my part. My father was trying to prepare me for this journey, but I wasn't ready for that lesson until, again, I got to a point of desperation and there was nowhere else to turn.
As Buddha says, the teacher appears when the student is ready.
That's exactly right.
I found that out the hard way, both in life and education and through entrepreneurship. So I'm really honored to have been on this podcast. I love that you are thinking about being in the business area. There are so many people out there who claim to know about small business and what it takes and the determination and the resiliency that you have to do. The truth of the matter is many of us fail lose all of our money, start
Oh my
again,
goodness, yes.
fail,
Yeah.
lose all of our money. And we never talk about that because these podcasts glorify,
Oh.
pretty people, happy people,
Yes.
successful people. But, I have had clients stiff me, not pay, and
Oh.
I didn't have enough money
I'm
in
dealing
the
with that
bank
right
at
now.
the time. See? And, we as entrepreneurs have to do this alone. That's why the practice of solitude is so important. And that's why your podcast is so important, because we need to be able to turn to something when we have a few seconds
Sure.
more in our day that
Right.
can help give us something and give us some techniques. I don't expect everybody to buy into journaling and meditation and walking in
It's
nature.
not for everyone. It's not for everyone.
That's kind of fruity as far as, where I was all of my life. I was
Yeah.
really busy, working 60, 80 hours a week. I couldn't have time for that. But what I did find out is the moment I started filling myself back up is the moment that I really started doing great things, both
Yeah.
entrepreneurially and with my life. And so
Yeah.
that's why I think that where you are moving in this vlog or podcast is so important, because a lot of people pretend to be playing in this space, but very few people
right.
give things that will help me to be a better entrepreneur in this space. And it is scary, it's lonely, and very isolating.
Yeah.
And if we can somehow say, solitude is what you need to be at peace with to be a good entrepreneur and a good human being, then your pillars have certainly helped a
Sure.
business owner, a human
Sure.
being, and us.
Well, and I think, honestly, that's where my adult life has been spent, in business, right? Even though I say I've been in the engineering business, I'm not an engineer. Okay, by education, by any stretch. So, but I've been entrenched in the business side of things, and I was president of a small chamber of commerce, so I understand small business and how to support small business. And I've had a small business of my own. I still do have a little, and I hate the word side hustle. I hate that term, but that's basically what it is, right? So, but honestly, when you think about the pillars and how they, to your point, that's where I think this podcast, I belong as, again, not influencer, because I'm not going to influence anybody, right? Maybe a better word would be inspirer. Okay. So, but if I can inspire somebody to help them find the first pillar, live, right? You have to have work-life balance. If you're an entrepreneur, your first tendency is to throw everything into that pot, and then you forget about everything that's over here.
Amen.
Especially if you have a family, that work-life balance is critically important, right?
And I think that's one thing that the millennials and Gen Z and Gen X are getting right. We boomers, someone would come into the office Friday at 5 and said, "Hey, Jamie, do you want to work a little bit later?" You'd be like, "Yes, sir," or "Yes, ma'am, I'm ready to go." And I think that the younger generation does have a better work-life balance, and that's so important. And then, of course, the love. Not just love of others, but the love of what we do, the love that we know that what we're doing as an entrepreneur will help fill a unique space, unique proposition that makes our world a better place. So we've got the life, love, live, and then we have the inspire, right? And so instead of being an influencer, you're an inspirer.
Yeah,
isn't that a
absolutely.
great thing?
And even pray, right? And that's not something that a lot of business owners embrace, right? Because faith is different for everybody. You could have it even two Catholics,
Sure,
right, who see that their faith, feel it differently. So, but I think gratitude is a prayer.
absolutely.
Right? Every morning, I thank God for another day and another opportunity to be better and to do better. That's a prayer. I'm saying thank you.
And it's a hard prayer to make some days.
It is.
It's
You're
a hard
absolutely
prayer.
right.
You know, whenever your belly's full and whenever your
Yeah.
bills are paid and whenever you are in a clean, nice house on a
Sure.
lovely, beautiful farm, it's very easy to
Absolutely.
do that. It's
Absolutely.
challenging when you're in a rental property or maybe no property. Maybe you're living in your car because you really believe in your business and
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
your focus. It's a harder prayer to make.
Sure. Thank you is the simplest and most powerful prayer there is. I mean, it really and truly is, particularly if you're in business, because, you know, being grateful for the opportunity you've been given, it's no more powerful thing than that. To have that mindset when you walk into your office, your business, whatever it is, even if you're just walking down the hall to a room in your house, if you work from home, when you open that door and walk in, if you're not grateful for the opportunity, you're not going to succeed.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And then you always go back to the idea of looking at those 5, scratching your ear and saying, okay, now let's do it again. Repeat.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. And I think, to me, the two that really get me are love and inspire. You know, because I was asked, I do a good bit of public speaking, and I was asked by a corporation if I would give a motivational talk to their sales staff, and I said, no, I don't do that. I don't motivate anybody. I said, now, if you want me to come in and talk to them and inspire them, I can try to do that. But they have to motivate themselves. Inspiration is external. Motivation is internal. Okay? I can inspire you to go out that door and do something, to want to do it, but you have to motivate yourself to go and do it. You know, so that, to me, those two, because, and love is obvious, right? Life is love. I mean, you can't do anything in life if you don't love yourself and you don't love the opportunity of being alive.
Yep.
You know,
Yet
take a deep breath.
there's a lot of pain
Absolutely.
that goes with that.
Absolutely. And yeah, love's not all sunshine and rainbows. It hurts sometimes. It leaves a mark. You know, I've got some scars that I can prove that. You know, but so I think those two are the most important to me. You know, and I think the obvious nature of being alive, I mean, that's easy. That's where I always start. That's why I put that one first. Okay. So those pillars are the things that my father always taught me, but I organized them in that order simply because they make sense to me.
Sure.
Right. You know, everything starts with being alive. You take a deep breath, you know, you're alive. You were born. You had nothing to do with it. You didn't
No.
ask to be here.
No.
Nobody, you know, your parents invited you on this journey, but then they said, go ahead, go live it, have fun. So everything starts with being alive, right? Because, I mean, the alternative is obvious. But then when you think about loving that life, right? Learning from going out, living it, learning from your mistakes, you know, being grateful for these opportunities, inspiring others to do the same. So that's kind of why I put them in that particular order.
You make it seem so simple. And that's what I find is people like us who do inspirational speaking, if you're good at it, it just looks easy. But the truth of the
think
matter
you're
is
right.
it's not easy
No.
and it requires so very much work. And so
Yeah.
those 3 things that you just said, and you know, very matter of fact fashion, it took a lot to get you there.
Oh yeah,
and
there's a lot of pain
understand
involved.
that.
You know, a
Absolutely.
lot of pain, a lot of darkness, and a lot of dark days, and you know, that's that underlying
Yeah.
piece to any success.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Is always there. You know,
Sure.
every overnight success was 20 years in the making.
Yeah.
You know, and you'll see a lot of, and we'll use that influencer term. There are a lot of young people out there, and God bless them. I think it's wonderful if you are, you know, on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, and you have followers and you're making money and doing that. That is phenomenal.
You think
I'm
it's
happy
okay
for
to
everybody.
sell your credibility that way?
If when you're 19, 20, 21 years old, I think I want everybody to do what they feel is the best for them. And if you're a young person and you're putting yourself out there, and if you're influencing fashion or music or whatever the case may be, if you believe in that from your heart, okay, and you feel that that is your way to give back and do what you need to do for the greater good, God bless you. I'm with you 100%.
But if I'm getting a little 25% kickback on doing this, maybe
Sure.
that's not exactly what I believe in.
Well,
I have some real heartburn about people who sell their credibility. And, I'll tell you about a great place to eat, and I'll tell you about a great
That's
product
a whole
to wear,
different thing. You're
but
exactly
I
right.
absolutely don't want to be remunerated for that. And I think that that is the cycle where we have a lot of young people chasing this elusive notion. And I see so many of my students on social media, and I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I teach a social media class, and we have a unit on influencing,
Sure.
So, I mean, there's certain ways that you can go about doing that. But what you said is that if you really believe in it.
If you really believe.
So that's the ticket for me. If
That
you
is-
really believe
yes.
in it, and it's a product that you really would use, then I don't know. Doesn't it get tainted whenever I give you money for it?
I think about, there's a lot of different stories, and I agree with you, because you take this podcast, for example. Nick and I started doing this because it was fun.
Yeah.
We thought, let's see where it goes. We had no idea where it would go, what direction it would take us. We didn't even know if we'd do more than 1 or 2 shows. We had no idea. We started to build a little bit of a following, and we're trending in the right direction. Every week that goes by, we're picking up more followers, subscribers, and so on and so forth. And we're grateful for that. We're happy about that. So then we started to talk recently about, okay, it's a heavy lift. This is technically what we're doing right now is my lunch hour for my day job, right? Nick he has a production company. He's trying to make a living. We're trying to do these things. It's become a heavy lift, and there's a cost associated with it. So what we originally started doing the podcast for, we're still doing that. We're still on the mission, and we're on the message with them. It's getting out there. But if we get a sponsor, okay, corporate America, ABZ Corporation, decides to give us money and underwrite this podcast, okay, does the mission and the message change?
It may.
It could.
It may.
It could. So the
You'd
struggle
hope you'd
may
get
be
a goodness of fit, but you don't know that.
Well, you're exactly right.
And you get painted with that particular paintbrush.
And I've told Nick this: if ABZ Corporation has an expectation that is not in alignment with what we're doing, how does that all work? So it's not a cut and dried thing. Again, there's no direct line from point A to point B. So to your point, if you really, really believe in something, okay, which we do, we both believe in the mission and the message of this podcast, right? And having said that, if we are going to try to monetize this, if we are going to try to get a sponsor, it's up to us to reach out to companies that are in alignment with that mission and that message.
And if you're doing a good enough job, and if you have the content and you're reaching the people that company wishes to reach, then it is a goodness of fit, and there's nothing but a win-win.
And that's what it has to be. That's what it has to be. So circling
So
back
this is
to
a
what I
commercial
said about,
for we're looking for someone who fits our mission. Absolutely, that's fantastic.
But again, getting back to those young influencers. Again, if they're just selling their soul, so to speak, right, to make a couple of bucks, no, that is not a good experience. Okay, in the moment it might be because they've got a new car, they've got this, they've got that, but 10 years from now, they're going to look back and it's not going to be a good experience. But if they are in alignment with what they're putting out there, here you go, right? I put that there, and we always give a lot of props, so to speak, to Chico Bocello. I love these people.
Sure.
And I will tell you, I talk about this and I recommend this place, not because they're nice to us and they let us film the podcast here, but because they have damn good coffee.
Yeah.
The coffee is really good.
So it's easy to love a
food is
product
fantastic.
that's good.
Right.
Does this say I'm pretty narcissistic if I'm promoting myself?
No, not at all. I think, listen, you talked about branding, but all branding starts here.
Absolutely.
It starts with
sure
you.
Does.
I represent GPI, Greenman Peterson Incorporated, in my day job. But if you're sitting as the executive director or CEO of a large utility, and I come in the door to introduce you to GPI, if you don't connect with me, if we don't connect on this personal level, you're not going to care about GPI. You have to connect with me first. You have to buy my brand first before you're going to buy into the GPI
So you're not really
brand.
worried about AI at all, huh?
No, well,
Not going to take that part away from
I think
from your sales.
to a certain extent, I think, and I know a lot of people that are in marketing, business development are concerned about that, but I don't know. And I'm curious as what you think of this. I'm not sure that AI will ever be able to replace that personal human connection.
To be continued.
Yeah, and I'm not saying
To
yes
be
or no.
continued.
That's basically me saying, I don't know.
To be
I don't know
continued.
enough about it. Now, it could.
Yeah, they have little robots now that older people have these robots that are with them, and they can talk to them and they can say, I don't feel well. And the robot can come over and say, well, your blood sugar's this way or that way.
Absolutely.
And, you know,
Absolutely.
talking about the practice of solitude, more and more people in America are alone now
Yeah.
and are living longer. And
Yeah.
so because we don't live in communities or communal living, we don't have intergenerational families that quote unquote take care of you. We have more people living
Do you
alone.
remember that when you were a kid? I mean, I can't tell you how many people I knew that there were 3 or 4 generations of a family, you know, friends of mine whose grandparents and even great grandparents lived in the house with them when they were growing up. I mean, that's not a thing anymore.
I think it has to do with as we've become more and more a wealthier nation, we have more and more space. Even if you think about kids who grew up in the 60s, they shared a room. There might have been one bathroom in the house.
Yeah.
Now we have to have suites at colleges for students who don't want to share anything more than a bathroom with one other individual. So as we've become more a wealthier nation, I think that we demand more and more space. And,
that's a good point.
you know, grandparents are now put into, you know, beautiful adult living arrangements or patio homes. And
Sure.
it changes. And financially, I think that you know, that's really changed. Again, it goes back to what we started talking about at the beginning today, that we have to adapt to change. We have to be resilient.
Yep.
That we have to be comfortable being alone, whether we're doing that on our own or whether we're doing it as part of a business, and that there are ways that we can get to be more and more comfortable doing that. It has been so much fun talking to you.
No,
Just a lot of fun.
I love this, and I honestly, I'm so grateful that you came on board. And honestly, we were sitting here having a meeting last week, and I just glanced over, and you were there. And you talk about just, you know, things happening by chance.
Oh, sure.
You know,
I mean, nothing happens by chance.
Well, I agree. That's where I was going. There's a reason that you came into this shop, and we had a conversation, and you know, because Nick will tell you, you've been on my list to have on this show from the very beginning, because I've always been intrigued by your presence. You know, you have, and I mentioned this to you, you have a presence, you carry yourself, and it's a tricky thing. And when you are able to master this, if you can walk into a room and carry yourself with confidence and humility at the same time, all right, and those things sound like but no, when you can do that, that's a special human being. And you have that quality. You always did. And I remember the first time I met you, I can't remember the place where it was. It was a Leadership Washington County function. And there were a bunch of pretty high-powered, influential people in this room supporting that organization, which I love that organization.
Fabulous.
And you walked in the room, and you're an attractive woman, but that wasn't what it was. Everybody that was there turned and looked at you because of the presence that you walked through that door with.
But the presence is, I love individuals. I can't wait to talk to them. I can't wait to meet
Right.
them. And
Right.
people smell that on you.
You make
They
people
can
feel welcome. They know.
tell if you love to listen, if you love to be with them, if you love to be in their presence. As I
Absolutely.
feel very blessed to be in your presence
And
today.
likewise.
You know, and that comes out, that just oozes
Yeah.
out, and you can't
Yeah.
manipulate it. I always say to my students, the 2 things I can't teach you to do that you most desperately need to do is to be curious and to be likable. And
Yeah.
I can't really teach you. I can teach you some techniques to how to good to make your acquaintance, or that was a really wonderful opportunity to speak with you and to follow up with a thank you email. I can teach you some techniques, but I can't teach you to be personable. I can't teach you to be curious.
You can't teach hard.
No, you can't.
You know, you
want to.
It's there or it's not.
You can help. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's a big part of it, isn't it? Is that you
absolutely.
need to, when you meet others, you need to be able to connect, because it's that connections that allow us to have the support we need.
You have to be genuine.
When we're leaving our little solitude and we know what we want to do, and then we have this business or we have this life that we want to lead with others. And
you have to be genuine with that. And you know, a firm handshake, a hug, whatever the case may be, you know, you can't go halfway with it. You know, I mean, you can't just get one of those one-armed hugs. If you're going to hug somebody, you got to hug somebody.
Yeah, the pandemic changed all of that for us.
Well, it did.
And so most of my students for the past 3 or 4 years haven't been able to touch anyone. And so one of the things that I'm reintroducing back into business communication is handshakes.
Yes.
And I have them.
That makes me sad. I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah,
I'm
it's wonderful.
Very happy you're doing
I work with a fabulous crew at the Career Development Center at Fairmont, and we actually have industry experts like yourself who come in and they work with our students and they teach them some very basics. So rather than learning how to do it while they're in an interview, they learn how to do it and make mistakes in a very safe environment. And so it works out really well. But just, you know, the handshake that you said and that type of thing.
It's important.
Thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. That's a tribute to both my parents.
It is, yeah, sure. It absolutely is. So listen, I mean, we're getting toward the end of our time here together today, but I would love to do this again. I hope that maybe we'll check back in here in a couple of months and see.
Yeah.
I'd be very curious to see how, because I know we've grown from the beginning. Good, bad, or indifferent, and we need to continue to grow.
I want to interview you. I want to talk to you about where you want this podcast to go. What are the 3 goals that you have for it? You know, what's the timeline?
I want to
push you on that. I think that would be a wonderful follow-up.
Before the end of the summer, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Deal. Thanks so much, Jamie.
Thank you.